use it are USDA employees. So that one was signed by the governor, I think, last week. We had a couple bills. They weren't request bills. They just address record keeping by the courts in wildlife cases. So it's housekeeping bills that were signed. Don't directly impact us. One bill that's kind of still hanging out there is the House Joint Resolution 1046, which approves and disapproves all agency rules. There were a selection of our rules that were noted to be disapproved. The ones that were going to be disapproved were a lot of changes that we'd made to our commercial fishing sections, which were essentially housekeeping changes to address the fact that we don't issue commercial fishing permits. So we essentially closed those. And changes to possession of fish. Some of the concerns there were related to a current rule. But again, the changes we were making were clarifications and housekeeping changes. So I don't want to say I'm okay with it passing, but if it does pass, it doesn't really change anything. It just, we have to go back and do a lot more cleanup. But the governor hasn't signed it yet. He's got a few more days to consider it. So, and I really don't know what he's going to do, so we'll see. Let's see, we had a...
Have we asked him to veto it?
We have not specifically asked him to veto it. We did explain some of our concerns with the disapproval, just that it doesn't, in effect, change anything. The concerns that I heard for why they were getting disapproved were based on current rules, and by disapproving our rules, it does not change the current rules. So we also, a lot of the commercial fishing changes were made, I mean, significant housekeeping changes were made in addressing the governor's executive order last year that asked state agencies to look at overhauling and cleaning up rules, and we had 150 rule change proposals I mean, you guys remember all these. Most of those were just housekeeping to address things that, you know, we're just trying to clean up. So commercial fishing is a good example. We haven't issued commercial fishing permits in 10, 20 years, I think. And so it's essentially because commercial fishing is closed, and we just clarified that. So to answer your question, not specifically, but we have let him know that we have some concerns with it. So, and I'm also not exactly sure what happens if he vetoes that bill, to be honest, to the rest of the agencies.
Yeah, importantly, it's a resolution that contains approval of all the state agency rules, and there are just a few that were pulled out, you know, half a dozen or so for disapproval. And so, you know, in the grand scheme of things, the governor wants all the other agency rules to get approved. And so I think they're trying to figure out if, you know, this rulemaking process has changed every year for about the last 5 or 6 years, and everybody's still trying to figure out how it works and what each other can do and all that stuff. So, but we've been in communication about what we think about the disapprovals on our stuff.
I should add, it's not on this legislative tracker that you have because it's not specifically a wildlife bill, but they did pass a pretty significant bill that overhauls the administrative rules process. Rhonda and I still have yet to digest the whole content, but essentially it creates a year-round joint committee on administrative rules. It's a legislative committee. I have asked legislators what their plans are for that, and I don't think they know yet, but I think the hope is that they have more time to review agency rules. So I'm not really sure what that's going to look like, but it does go into effect in September, and so there's probably going to be some process that affects what we do here somehow. I guess we'll have to figure it out. So,
Corey, did they affirmatively disapprove our rules, or did they do it by default?
So the bill, basically it reads, all agency rules are approved except XYZ, and then it disapproves our sections, a couple sections. It doesn't disapprove every single rule proposal that we submitted. And they can't line item, so if they don't like one rule change, they have to disapprove the entire section, which is why the entire commercial fishing section's disapproved. What I was hearing is we had some language in there that said you needed a permit essentially to fish commercially on private waters, which is currently a process. It just was rewritten and moved around, but rather than just disapproving that 2 sentences, they have to disapprove the entire section. So I want to say the new process, they have to affirmatively approve rules, but again, I need to sift through, it's a pretty long bill with some various changes, so I'll report back next month on that.
Yeah, we might want to get your committee together after we've
Yeah.
sorted it out and talk about the new process.
Maybe
Yeah.
Clayton can help us. Okay, so we had a couple, just resolutions recognizing the importance of public lands. And then we had another request bill, Senate Bill 770 by Senator Blake Stevens and Representative Eric Roberts, both new legislators. It just reauthorized our wildlife diversity tax checkoff, which is something we have to do every 4 years. Couple more courts bills. Senate Bill 839 prohibits game wardens from placing game cameras on private property without permission of the property owner. That one did get signed and it goes into effect in November, although that is not a process that we currently utilize. And then just a couple more resolutions that passed. One recognizing our hunter education program, and another one on the Senate side recognizing the importance of public lands.
Yeah, and on the game warden bill, they can also place a camera if they have a court order or a warrant.
Correct,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah.
We got that amended at least in the process.
Yep.
Yep.
Any questions?
Questions on the state legislative front? Just want to say kudos to Corey because she had there were some other really difficult bills out there that didn't really make it through at the end of the day, and Corey did it just about all by herself this year. So JD pulled away, and it seems like it turned out better for us since JD left the building, so.
Which is also a good reminder that all those bills will be back alive next year.
Yeah,
so.
that's true, yeah.
So that this list, I think that Rhonda gave you, it doesn't have all the bills that died or went dormant, but all the ones that didn't get killed, didn't get voted down, will come back next session where they left off. So we know we at least have a couple things to look forward to next year, but that's it. So thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Also in your packet, you've got a report from Brittany Preston on things happening at the federal and congressional level. We've got a long agenda, short on time, so I'll let you all take a look at that at your leisure. I will point out on page 2, it talks about President Biden's America the Beautiful report, which proposes this 30 by 30 initiative, which is that 30% of our lands and waters in the United States would be conserved by the year 2030. And so you may be getting, hopefully this week, an email. I know Arizona's commission has really taken some, pretty specific and maybe even aggressive action with regard to this, just out of fear that it's going to mean more lands get locked up and unused for hunting and fishing and, turned into monuments and all kinds of stuff that make them sort of off limits for hunters and anglers in particular. And that's definitely a concern that I've expressed in my various forums at the national level as well, although we have a lot less public land than Arizona does. So stay tuned for that. It's, if you're on the WAFWA commissioners email list, at least you'll get a copy of what the Arizona commissioners sent out. And if not, just let us know and I can make sure you get it. So that's one thing worth pointing out there. The rest of it's really all, stimulus and budget and that sort of thing. We did get Recovering America's Wildlife Act reintroduced in the House. And so we'll see what happens with that. This will be our 4th year in a row, maybe 3rd or 4th year in a row, trying to get congressional approval of that legislation, which you will recall would bring significant more funds to state agencies to deal with conserving species, trying to keep them off the endangered species list, keeping common species common, so to speak, but also really addressing those species of greatest conservation needs. So we'll see if that, what happens with that. Lots of conversations happening with that at the national level. On the state report, I would point out we had our 3rd Vamos a Pescar fishing clinic over the weekend. There's, I think, one more, Micah, somebody coming up. I did a poor job of getting 2 more coming up, in the weeks ahead. So those are Saturdays. That's our partnership with OKC Latina and others to get the Hispanic community more engaged in fishing and that sort of thing. So I was able to go to the kickoff one of those, and though the fish weren't cooperating very well that day, I heard it's turned out a little better since, which it really couldn't have gotten much worse than the bite not being on at that first one. But it was fun nonetheless. Got to see a few of them catch their first fish. That's always fun. Corey went through the legislative update. Lots of stuff happening on the human dimensions front. In fact, you're going to hear, I think, from Bill a summary today of Human Dimensions work on a survey that went out gathering turkey hunters, in particular, input on proposed changes that you're going to have before you today, the turkey resolution. Over 5,000 people responded and submitted comments on that, so quite a bit of interest in what we're doing on turkeys and quite a bit of interest in the overall sustainability of the turkey population in Oklahoma, as you can imagine, with our second most popular hunted species in the state now. Other things going on there, I'll let you read about it. You'll also see for the first time in the report a summary of all the stuff the admin division's been doing. Usually that's all behind the scenes, but as we started doing during COVID, just to make sure everybody understands that folks didn't go home and sit in their pajamas all day as they were teleworking. They were actually teleworking and getting quite a bit of stuff done. In fact, busier and more complex and complicated than ever, I would say. Fish stocking going on, paddlefish research centers probably wound down at this point, but I know caviar sales are ramping up and going. See lots of stuff going on there in fisheries division. New state record spotted sucker at Lake Latonka. Saw a giant hybrid sunfish was caught too very recently. It's like a giant pancake. C&E division, cranking. This, I'll let you kind of, lots of stuff going on with the online classes, learn how to fish. You'll see some pictures in there of a partnership with the foundation. I don't know if Rick wants to cover a little bit of that with the new partnership with OG&E. You'll see some pictures from that event of 68 people out at that fishing clinic out at their Horseshoe Lake facility, which is out by Hera. 35 kids got new rods and reels thanks to the foundation. Skylar even cleaned 40 of those catfish and sent them home with the participants. So great event, lots of good stuff, especially now that things are warming up. You can also see the results there of our first virtual archery shoot for the new varsity archery program. We essentially, this is the first year for us to have a full year of that varsity archery, right? Micah, yes, okay, Nels, there's Nels too, okay, yeah. Leaving me hanging up here, come on. So you can see the results of that, the teams and how they finished, how they shook out, the individual winners. Wildlife Division's getting ready to crank up goose banding activities, so if you're interested in that, never more fun. You've never had it fun unless you've wrangled a goose. Try to get a band on its leg. A field day coming up at Lexington as well to teach folks wild turkey and white-tailed deer habitat management down at Lexington right here south of the city from 9 to noon, June 12th. So we expect that one ought to be pretty well attended, being so close to a population center. See all the other things going on. Yes, we've had some nuisance bear calls. About normal this time of year, although there have been some unusual and abnormal places that they're showing up nowadays. So our folks are getting more and more used to dealing with bears in more urban settings, and so our friends in Colorado have been very helpful to us to learn how that works up in their neck of the woods. They deal with it a lot more frequently than we do. Law enforcement, we had our first badge pinning ceremony. I'm not sure why we just started this year. We should have been doing it a long time, but we had 45 to 50 people here, lots of families watching the new wardens get their badges after successfully completing their Game Warden Academy out at Gruber, and it was a great day. Some of you, I know, Commissioner Brewster in particular, saw video of over 1,000 gar being taken by bow fishermen. So that case is still underway. Citations have been issued, and we're just going to see how that turns out. But lots of new gear and trucks starting to roll out to the game warden ranks as well. Finally, I just got a quick update from Nels on what was a 20-year high in controlled hunt applications this year. You know, we wrapped that up last month. We had over 25,000 people applied for controlled hunts this year, a 20-year high. Over 4,500 purchased point guard for the first time ever, Commissioner Barwick. That brought in almost $23,000 of additional state funding just for the point guard. Nearly 2,900 applications were for preference point only. So far, as of last week at least, the Outdoor Oklahoma Adventures raffles have generated $132,000. 50 of that is for the cow elk down in Mears. So that's still the most popular choice. Next highest is $30,000 for the lifetime license. And so these raffles, again, will run through the first week in August, and we'll continue to do some, I know C&E Division will do some marketing and that sort of thing for that. So with that, I will wrap it up and see if there are any questions. Busy times.
Thank you, JD, for
Thank
that
you.
report. Very informative, as always. Next item on the agenda is the presentation, April 30th financial statement. Amanda Stewart. Amanda?
Good morning, Commissioners. I have for you today the April 30th, 2021 financial report. The first report in your packet is for the combined balance sheet for all fund types and account groups for April 30th, 2021. As of the end of the month, the liabilities and fund balance is $490,253,925. Of that, total liabilities is $20,962,096 compared to last year of $417,433,048. Next is the combined balance sheet for the trust funds. For our expendable trust, our balance is $39,081,654. Our non-expendable trust is $96,138,723. Our pension trust is $140,234,953. Our DC trust is $5,513,635. For a total of $280,968,965, compared to last year of $223,939,835. Our combined statement of revenue, expenditures, and change in fund balance for the month. Our total revenue is $44,761,849. Our total expenditures is $44,342,234 for an excess of $419,615. Our combined statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for trust funds as of the end of the month, April 30th, our total fund balance is $241,887,311, compared to last year, $209,620,210. And our wildlife contributions report for the month is a total of $1,075. Happy to answer any questions.
Any other questions at all? Call for a motion? So moved. Second? Discussion? Being none, roll call.
Commissioner Brewster. Commissioner Barwick. Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Gaddis. Commissioner Zelps. Commissioner Dillingham. Commissioner Holder. Commissioner Mabry.
Aye. Next item, Amanda.
While he's getting that up, I will just give you a few notes, since the report in your packet on license sales. The number of licenses sold is down 32% from May 2020 for the month of May. Year-to-date, down 6%. And so it's just kind of indicating a more return back to normal sales after the huge increase in sales we had last spring. Resident fishing is down quite a bit, resident hunting down for the month. Lifetimes, we're down 20%, but up 6% year-to-date. So of note, year-to-date numbers remain high for popular licenses, such as the Lifetime Combo is up 28% and Lifetime Fishing is up 36%.
Yeah, so you'll remember, last year we doubled license sales year over year, last May and last June. And so, right, like Amanda said, we expected our big challenge, operation retention, out of across the agency, was to try to keep as many of those new hunters and anglers hooked up as we can. But of course, we expected to see a little slide back once people got back to softball and soccer and golf and everything else that competes.
Amanda, what's the senior lifetime sales? I mean, are they up, are they even,
Let me see
going
if
down?
he's put that on here. He didn't put that on my list, but I can get that information for you and send it to you.
I encourage everybody to pay
Like
for
all the other ones.
pay for all the seniors they know, even if they don't hunt and fish.
All the other ones I have on here, but I'll send you that after the meeting.
Best deal there is.
Yep.
Any other questions? Anybody? Motion to approve the budget?
Oh,
Second?
are we did we do the budget yet, or the donations and financial statement?
Oh, yeah.
Voted for that.
And you voted on that, okay.
Ready for her presentation.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so next up is the 2022 budget. Wanted to kind of give you an overview of our timeline this year. So we started with the budgeting strategically team on March 15th and kicked off our planning. The 15th through the 26th, we started entering personnel budget into the system to get the base for that. It's about 55% of our budget, so it's something that needs to be looked at first. March 26th was our revenue and prior year obligations for capital projects. That was our deadline to have all of those identified. And then March 26th to April 16th, the division worked on zero-based budget. So this year, instead of getting a baseline budget for their division, they worked from zero and built their budget up based on prior year budget to actual reports. Then April 19th to the 23rd, Amanda and Lindsay with the chiefs looked through all the budgets, met with all the divisions to go over any anomalies or any additions or subtractions from prior year. And then we looked at add-ons for the budget. So once we got an idea of where we looked at to see if we could add any add-ons, we set May 7th as a deadline for that. So JD Wade and I met on May 7th to get more information from the divisions on those add-ons. We finalized it, we sent it to the committee, and then had the finance committee meeting, and then today, here we are. So our proposed budget for 2022 overall is, excluding capital expenditures, is $52,643,962. So that's an increase of $1.9 million or 3.7%. And then the overall budget, including capital expenditures, is $78,152,932, which is an increase of 16.4%. So if you remember last year at this time, we were telling you that I was having to cut the budget by $7.6 million, I think. So this year, it's a much different story than last year, which is a sigh of relief, I think, for everyone. So personnel costs total $30,546,791.
It's a slight decrease over last year because if you remember, we had the COLA budgeted last year in that line item. So there was an offset of expenditures in that line item. So some of the highlights for the operations increases are in admin, we budgeted for a computer replacement plan. Years past, we had just budgeted for one-off computers. So this will be a 3-year lease computer replacement plan. There's several studies for human dimensions. We have a couple conferences that we'll be hosting. Waffle Conference, we have Wildlife Expo. There's several things that weren't included in last year's budget that are included this year because we're conferencing again. PeopleSoft Phase 2 project is for us to get off of our internal accounting system that's 21 years old and failing daily. So that is $1 million ticket item in the admin budget. And there's some other things that we changed around in the division budgets that are now included in the admin budget that kind of show an increase in our division. For wildlife, the items of highlight are 2 new technician FTEs, one for Cherokee and one for Sandhills WMA. They budgeted for 14 vehicles and 4 tractors, and then they had a huge gravel purchase planned. That was over and above their regular gravel purchases. And fish, they budgeted for 1 new technician FTE, and there's a Byron State Fish Hatchery project that they had to buy a lot of rock for. So that was outside of their normal expenditures. For law enforcement, there's 1 new lieutenant budgeted FTE, and then a thermal optics donation that we just put in the budget. It was a 0 budget. We had to budget it to bring the money in so that we could spend it. And then communication, education, marketing, and branding, some things with Brant that they are gonna do a little bit more of. And then our branding project that is slowly getting kicked off, but I think is getting kicked off this fiscal year and will carry over into next fiscal year. So our revenue picture is, we have our spendable revenue of $72,381,000. Unexpended funds are carryover, and then we have the lifetime license transfer and refunds that have to be budgeted but then come back out of $4.6 million. So when you look at some of the big ticket items, there's a land purchase in wildlife that's $8 million. So when you peel that out and peel back the lifetime license transfer, some of the other big ticket items, you get to our what our budget base is usually. And I think, okay, more revenue details. This is all in your packet, so if you want to see the details of where we're estimating the revenue coming from. And then our proposed capital expenditure is the next page in your report, and that is all of our prior year obligations, multi-year projects, and then a few additional projects for a total of $20,886,970. Of that, $985,693 is state funds. The rest are federal, and then under land, you can see that large land purchase in that bottom green bar. Another highlight for the budget is employee compensation. So we included in this budget to take current employees that have been with the department for less than 1 year to 85% of their market average. We're taking employees that have been here for more than a year that aren't at 90% of their market to 90%, and then anyone over 90% of their midpoint will be getting a 2% increase. So another one of the changes is increasing the entire pay scale to meet market needs. We sent our information over to have it reviewed, and it was recommended that we increase our scale by another 3% on top of the 3% that was done in 2019 to get us closer to market. And that's my highlights. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Chairman Mabry, the Finance Committee met a couple of weeks ago, and I recommend and make the motion that we approve the budget for the coming year.
Got a motion second?
Second.
Further discussion?
Amanda, quick question on the compensation studies from 2019 and then the more current. Who performs that?
So the Office of Management and Enterprise Services has a division that does the market analysis for the pay scales. And in 2019, the recommendation was to do 6% of our current pay scale, and only 3% was done at that time. So I sent them our current scale and had them evaluated again based on the fact that only 3% was done at the time. And they said the additional 3% would get us to market today.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that used to be, we've had a lot of internal discussion about it. It used to be a service that agencies had to hire out when they wanted to. And of course, this agency, when it switched from a tenure-based pay plan, hired Hay Group. Now everybody just uses the Hay Group as kind of the standard for market-based pay analysis, and because all the agencies were contracting out for that service, they built that expertise in-house over at OMES and got several people on board that are trained there. I know Amanda's been through it all too with them and works on some of their teams that review agency compensation and that kind of thing. So it's kind of nice to have it in-house where we don't have to pay for it anymore every time we want to go look at what an updated market looks like.
Yeah, they have access to the same databases as we would pay for an external company to do the same work. So that was nice that they do that free of, I say free of charge. We're still paying them to do things, but not having to pay extra for this service.
Any other discussion? There being none, on the roll call, please, approve the budget.
Commissioner Brewster.
Aye.
Commissioner Barwick.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Gaddis. Aye. Commissioner Zelps.
Aye.
Commissioner Dillingham.
Aye.
Commissioner Holder. Commissioner Mabry.
Got it. Thank you, Amanda, I appreciate that. Bill Dinkins, I think you're up on the floor for approval for the donations of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. As JD alluded to, Laura MacGyver is back. And we're glad to see Laura when she shows up on Commission Day, because that usually means there's a donation involved. So if Laura can come on up, I won't steal her thunder, but I know there's a couple of different WMAs and multiple chapters involved in this presentation.
Such a pleasure to be able here to bring good news. That's always the fun stuff, right? Instead of having to be the down, the Debbie Downer type of thing. And last month, it was funny because I said good morning, and then my mind completely went blank. So I will not let that happen this morning. I don't know if did I introduce you last time? Okay, so the new incoming president here, who's taken over for last few months, Troy Ellison for Central Oklahoma 89-year chapter. But that doesn't mean that John Bella, the former president, is stepped away. In fact, he is the reason we have more donations. He's went out and solicited a few more projects, and so we are happy to give you, it'll be a total of $7,020, which with your 3-to-1 match should combine together for $28,080 projects for both Lexington WMA and the Deep Fork Canadian WMA, or Deep Fork WMA. So those are for fire skid unit and for a UTV for prescribed fire. And a lot of our general public, the only thing I just wanted to say before we wrap this up is this comment that I just love from one of the managers. I won't tell you which WMA because I don't want everybody overwhelming this particular WMA, but some hunters reported to me this fall they had discovered quail using those areas that had prior burns. Now that's not a surprise to me, but it just demonstrates the importance of prescribed fire and how much we support it and how important it is that we continue to keep those objectives in mind. So this is encouraging to our plan and certainly to those hunters. It's our intention to continue and expand these improvements as much as we can. So, again, thank you for the opportunity to partner with you. I love working with this agency. You're a delight to work with. And I echo a lot of Commissioner Hughes' comments. I totally agree. Very well-oiled machine here. So, for the donation, we have, just for demonstration purposes, okay, the check for the $7,020. So, thank you so much. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the acceptance of that donation.
Motion and second, accept the donation from Pheasants Quail Forever. Discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Brewster. Commissioner Barwick. Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Gaddis. Commissioner Zelps. Commissioner Dillingham. Commissioner Holder. Commissioner Mabry.
Aye. Next on the agenda is the update on the Oklahoma Falconry Program and the North American Falconers Association. Bill Dinkins. Bill?
Thanks, sir. So I'm going to bring up Rod Smith. Rod Smith's our Southwest Region Supervisor and one of my longest tenured employees in Wildlife Division. And you're going to find out here later in the agenda he wears multiple hats. But today he's here to talk about the Oklahoma Falconry Program and then introduce our guest.
Not only am I the longest tenured Wildlife Division, I'm the longest tenured in the agency and the oldest in the agency, so I guess that makes me kind of a dinosaur, huh? Anyway, I think everybody's familiar with what falconry is. It's people using raptors to hunt game animals, and it's one of the oldest forms of hunting in the world. It's been around for a long, long time. And Oklahoma's had a real active group for my whole tenure of working with falconers. We have about 130 falconers in the state. That may sound like a real small number, but it's a very difficult sport to do. It takes very dedicated people, and falconers are just avid about what they do. But it's also a very difficult sport to get into. To become a licensed falconer in Oklahoma, a person first has to take an exam, and it's tough. If I hadn't helped write it, I couldn't pass it. Then they have to build facilities that are federally mandated guidelines, and those have to be inspected. Then they have to find a current licensed falconer that's a general or master falconer to sponsor them for an apprenticeship. So once people go through all those hurdles, then they serve a 2-year apprenticeship. After that, they can become a general falconer if they've done everything they should. And after 5 years, then they can become a master falconer. So it's a tough sport. Robert will be here in a minute to talk to you about the falconry meet, and he can attest to what all's involved. These birds have to be fed animals. You can't just go buy a hamburger and feed it to the raptors. So they have to have like baby chicks or mice or whatever. It's rather expensive for a lot of people, and it takes a lot of time and effort. Anyway, it's both a federal and state program, but the federal government has turned over most of the responsibility to states. We do all the licensing and inspections and make sure everybody's following all the rules and regs and that kind of thing. Actually, as coordinator, I do very little. Becky Rauner does all the work. She is the person who handles all the paperwork and contacts with falconers. Rhonda used to do that once back in the day. So, coming up is annually there's a meeting of the National Meeting of Falconers. And in fact, it's almost international. Some folks come in from other countries. This will be the 3rd time that Oklahoma has been host to that. Robert Huber, Robert, if you'll come up. is Central District Director or something like that for the national group, and will be involved with the meet that's here in Oklahoma. So Robert, if you'll fill everybody in.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. After listening to Rod talk about the requirements, makes me glad I started 52 years ago. And I maintain my license for that reason. And he's right. Flying birds and being a falconer is extremely difficult. It takes a lot of time, a lot of commitment. We don't travel. My wife and I don't travel in the wintertime because I'm out flying birds. He says, we're just going to take off for a week. I said, no, if you take off for a week, it puts me 3 weeks behind in my season, so it's not going to happen. So we have that argument quite often. North American Falconer Association is the largest membership organization in the world. We hold annual meets once a year, and it rotates between, right now, 4 states: Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. We've been looking to expand that to other states, a little bit farther west, into New Mexico potentially, and back east a little bit. But most of the time, what the falconers that are coming from the east specifically are looking for jackrabbits. They like jackrabbits, and that's one of the primary things that we hunt. We're hunting jackrabbits, primarily cottontails is probably the biggest number of animals that are caught at a meet. Have a lot of guys with falcons that are looking for flying ducks. And it's not as easy as it sounds. I've been flying falcons for 20 years. I currently fly a captive bred terrestrial Peel's peregrine. He's 3 years old. And last year, I probably took 10 ducks with him. And that's flying probably 100 days. Unlike duck hunters with guns that love windy weather and low clouds and pushes them in, I'm looking for nice clear skies, low winds. They don't happen that often, and it's typically when you put your bird up on a pond with ducks, and it's a small pond, the bird will go up hopefully between 500 to 1,000 feet above the pond. And when the bird is positioned, you flush the ducks, and if everything works out right, the falcon comes down and catches the duck. That happens about 40% of the time, but it's one and done, because once the bird misses, you call it back, you feed it up, and you go home. And that's why it's such an intensive sport for us, because we'll hunt, every opportunity I have now that I'm retired. In the mornings, I still don't have that great of success, and that's one of the challenges of falconry, and it's often called a bird watcher sport, because we're right there interacting and working with the birds and letting them go and fly stuff. At this meet, which is going to be held in Quartz Mountain State Park this year, it's an iconic location. Most of you, if you've been there, it's like a European hunting lodge. So we're real excited about having it there. I'm going to correct Rod. This is the 4th meet in Oklahoma. The first one was in 1990 in Woodward, Oklahoma. We had one back in Woodward in 2009. I was able to chair that meet. The last meet we had was in Elk City in 2016. And so this year it's 2021. And we do have a lot of guys that will come in from England. We have some that will come over from the Arabic states and visit. It's attended by probably around 150 to 200 falconers. Of course, their spouses and that sort of thing will come often. We have a lot of people that will come and just visit, because there's birds to see. Generally, we'll have about 50 different types of hawks. Typically, they're Harris hawks and red tails. A lot of goshawks. There'll be probably anywhere around 20 to 30 people with falcons, anywhere from prairie falcons to peregrines to small merlins. And then we'll have a few people with eagles, bringing in golden eagles, and we'll have some that will have some captive bred martial eagles, and they're looking for jackrabbits. It's a week-long meet. It's in November 14th through the 19th. We put it a week before gun season for deer, because that's a big conflict. We are looking at, a lot of people are starting to switch what we call micro falconry. We've all seen, I don't know if I should go to this road, but we've all seen the windmills go up, and windmills are deaf to long ringers. I mean, I can't fly within 5 miles of a windmill, because the falcon potentially could go that quick that way, and it's dangerous, so we don't. So a lot of people are shifting to what's called micro falconry, which is small falcons. And the quarry changes. Most of the quarry is starlings, but one of the preferred ones is dove. So that area is well known for that, and we're really hopeful to have it there. We have a lot of activities, and I'll try to cut this up real quick, but it is primarily a hunting meet. But nightly, we have equipment sales, raffle type items that go on every night. It's a social event. Plus, every night we have speakers from all across the country to come in and talk about specific aspects of falconry. And this will also be virtual in that, just like you guys here are doing, we're going to have a virtual component to all the presentations are taped and videoed and shared. You're all, you know, it's during that week. We welcome you to come down. Representative Talley was very helpful for me with the squirrel bill, so he'll be one that I'll invite down to come down and visit and spend a day or so. So if you have the time, you're welcome to come through, contact me. We can get you set up to go out with some people. Right now, our next step for me is to get land access and permission from people to allow us to go on the property to hunt and fly birds. Any questions?
Robert, how many birds do you have?
I have 2 right now. I've got a 21-year-old hybrid falcon. I haven't flown him for several years because he started chasing red tails, which is real dangerous for these birds. Then the bird I have now is a 3-year-old Peel's peregrine. His season ended early last year when he broke his leg when he hit a duck. And I had a mallard rising straight off the pond, and he hit it, and it sounded like a college baseball bat. Fortunately, the vet was able to heal it, and he's recovering, and I'm looking forward to another good season.
And do you have a local club too?
The Oklahoma Falconers Association, we had our picnic this last Saturday. We generally have about 40 members that are active, and you know, Rod talked about the licensed falconers estate. Not all of them have birds or running birds or really active in the sport. A lot of people will get into it and think, okay, this is not what I want to do, because it is an obsession. It becomes your life. You know, it's been mine for the last 50-some years. So.
Does your club put on demonstrations for people, private groups or public?
It's not really demonstration. We will do education. And we'll have an education component at the NAFA meet where we'll be inviting the students and schools to come. And we often will go to schools during that time to show the birds and talk to the kids about them. We attend the Wildlife Expo every year.
Right, I've seen you out there.
And so the whole point is just to get people aware of raptors and the conservation of them. We try not to promote falconry. It has a tendency to promote itself because, you know, and then try to teach people how to get into it.
Well, it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
So, Commissioner Hughes and I are curious, what's your quarry for the golden eagle? Do you like kick a goat loose or something? Or?
They're primarily jackrabbits is what they hunt with golden eagles.
Man,
And if you ever, I don't know if you've ever been out with gold, no, probably not, but a lot of times when you go out, you'll have a line of people as beaters in a field, and the person has the golden eagle, and the jack will flush, the golden eagle will take off. And if the eagle's coming back, you'll see nobody raising their arms. Everybody's standing like this and very still. Only the falconer raises his arm to bring the eagle back because they're large birds. And there's something to see. And they don't look like they're moving very fast, but they are moving. Yeah. Lauren McGow, who is an Oklahoma falconer, is very well known for flying eagles. She did she did some of her studies over in Russia on the steppes with the golden eagles, and is very active.
Wasn't she on the History Channel?
Yes, sir. That's the same one. Yeah. But we're very proud of Lauren. She's done a lot for promoting Oklahoma and falconry.
What kind of eagle is it in Russia that they hunt the wolves with? I've seen
Those,
videos of it.
They're golden.
Are they golden?
They're a type of golden eagle. A lot of them called steppe eagles, I believe.
Crazy.
And they primarily hunt fox, and they're doing that for furs to sell to help supplement income.
Awesome.
Any other questions? Robert or Rod? Very interesting program.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, when he said if you want to come visit, come visit, actually, some of the falconers allow groups to go out with them, and yes, like the golden eagle, you know, they can take several. So if you'd like to see what falconry is about and like to watch the birds fly, they will welcome you. Becky is going to be involved with that meet some. You could coordinate through Becky how to get a hold of the right people to go out.
Right. We're happy to do that.
It's Grand National Quail Week.
All right, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Rod, for that information. Oklahoma Falconry Program, very interesting. Bill Dinkins, I think you're on, item 13, the migratory bird resolution.
Yes, sir, thank you. So, we come to you this time of year to, every year to talk about the migratory bird resolution. This year, I would like to start by introducing James Morrell. James, will you stand up, please? James came on board with us in December of '20 as our new migratory bird and wetland development biologist. Glad to have James on board. He finished up his PhD down at Texas Tech, so he's an Oklahoma kid, so he's back to Oklahoma, and we're glad to have him. But I brought up James. James obviously was an integral part, along with Jerry Shaw, on drafting the resolution. In a nutshell, you know, the Central Flyway Council works with Fish and Wildlife Service through the regulatory process, and they use the adaptive harvest management model, which studies population trends and habitat conditions, as well as consulting with the other flyways. And through that, staff has come up with the recommendation before you that, you know, we still have the liberal bag, 6-duck bag afforded to us. So we're making the recommendation for that. But in a nutshell, there's no changes in any bag or possession limits on the resolution for all species. Adjustments were made for calendar roll, and efforts were to maintain and maximize opening on weekends was intact. The only change that I need to mention is actually the falconry dove season. We're going to shift it to the November time frame, 17 days there, no biological impact, so we recommend that change as well. Anybody have any questions? With the falconry dove? Usually runs February 20 through March 8 time frame. So this year's proposal is November 6 through November 22. Good news is no reduction in bag limits this year, so.
I move to approve. The motion approved, second. Further discussion? There being none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Brewster?
Aye.
Commissioner Barwick?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes?
Aye.
Commissioner Gaddis? Aye. Commissioner Zelps?
Aye.
Commissioner Dillingham?
Aye.
Commissioner Holder?
Aye.
Commissioner Mabry?
Aye. Agenda item number 14, consideration and vote to approve, amend, reject, or take other action on emergency rules for the new Barren Fork Wildlife Management Area. Bill Dinkins.
So the new Barren Fork property, if you recall, we closed on it in March of 2021, approximately 500 acres in Adair County. I asked Kurt Allen. Kurt Allen, go ahead and stand up, please. Kurt Allen's our biologist over there over Cookson. Also oversees bears in the northeast part of the state, but he will be managing, along with Fish Division staff, the new Barren Fork Wildlife Management Area. Recommendations came in to basically maximize opportunity for this property. So the dates for the major seasons will all be same as statewide. And that is similar to Ozark Plateau, Thomas A. Bamberger, and Sparrowhawk WMA, surrounding WMA. So we try to be consistent, as y'all know, simplify regulations. So that is the recommendation from staff for the emergency rules.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the Rules Committee met and discussed these emergency rules, and we recommend approval.
Okay. Motion to approve. Second? Second, Dillingham. Further discussion? There being none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Brewster? Aye. Commissioner Barwick?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes?
Aye.
Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye.
Commissioner Zelps?
Aye.
Commissioner Dillingham?
Aye.
Commissioner Holder? Commissioner Mabry?
Aye. Item number 15, we're gonna have passed till next month. I think we've got to get approval from the governor on that. It relates to the overnight camping areas. And item number 16 is consideration and vote to approve, amend, reject, or take other action on emergency rules relating to Furbearer seasons due to the legislative change to the statute.
Yes, sir, okay. Corey brought up Jared Davis. Where's Jared Davis? Go ahead and stand up, Jared. I like these opportunities to introduce staff to you so you can put a name and a face together. Jared's our wildlife biologist, specializing in fur for us. As Corey mentioned, House Bill 1112 was signed by the governor, which basically transferred the authority for fur bearers to you all. And so to be able to have a fur bearer season this fall, those emergency rules are needed. The main thing, there's no changes in seasons or bag limits. It's just putting things they struck in 29 over into 800. And the biggie, quite honestly, was the legal means of take was listed in 29, and we do not have that in 800. So that's the emergencies. We need to get the legal means of take in 800 so law enforcement can enforce it. But again, no changes in season and bag limits on this one either, so.
Mr. Chairman, again, the Rules Committee met and recommends approval of those
Okay.
emergency rules for the fur bearer season.
Motion by Commissioner Barwick, second.
Second.
I so moved too.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Brewster. Aye. Commissioner Barwick.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Gaddis. Aye. Commissioner Zelps.
Aye.
Commissioner Dillingham.
Aye.
Commissioner Holder. Commissioner Mabry.
Aye. Item number 17 on the agenda is consideration and vote to approve, amend, reject, or take other action on a resolution to update the conservation passport list of department-owned properties to include the new Barren Fork WMA. Mr. Dinkins.
Yes, sir. So as is normal when we have a property that we own or purchase, we bring the resolution to you for approval to add that piece of property to the conservation passport option. Just real quick, conservation passport option is for non-hunting, non-fishing activities for folks that would like to use those properties that we own. Annual fee is $26 and a 3-day is $15. And I had Mike Crispin run some numbers because I thought somebody might ask, but we saw quite a jump from 19 to 20, and I mean, you'd expect that with COVID, but we sold 473 in 19 and 713 this past year. So people are using that option.
I move to approve.
And I'll
Motion.
second.
Second. Discussion? There being none, roll call.
Commissioner Brewster.
Aye.
Commissioner Barwick.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Gaddis. Aye. Commissioner Zelps.
Aye.
Commissioner Dillingham.
Aye.
Commissioner Holder. Commissioner Mabry.
Aye. Next item on the agenda, item number 18, consideration and vote to approve, amend, reject, or take other action on a resolution to establish wild turkey seasons and bag limits this next year.
Well, no surprise here. We've been talking about turkeys for a couple of years, and the concern that we've had with the populations continuing to decline. I think I'm going to start with bringing Rod Smith back up. One of the other hats Rod wears is our Rio Grande turkey project leader for Oklahoma. And he's going to talk a little bit about some of the survey and population status first, and then I'll come back up and make the recommendation.
There are actually two of us that work with wild turkeys in the state. I work with Rio Grandes, and Eric Suttles works with eastern turkeys. So we share the project together. I worked early in my career with restoration of wild turkeys, trapping and transplanting around the state. And it was really nice to see the results of your work. You know, sometimes you don't, but turkey numbers increased throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and populations peaked in 2006. That was our highest population level ever. We knew that wasn't going to be sustainable. But prior to 2006, we had 7 years of ideal conditions for turkeys to reproduce. So for about a 10-year period prior to that, they almost exploded, which For one, it was kind of nice because we were having a lot of depredation issues in the early 2000s with hay bales and peanuts and all kinds of things. And I told people at the time, it's not going to be sustainable. We will retract from the 2006 numbers. And we did, somewhat. And then the drought of 2011, 2012, especially in western Oklahoma. Commissioner Holder, you know what it was like out there, and Commissioner Mabry. So we had a population decline, minor one, following the drought. We had some increase back after that, once it started raining again. And then in about 2017, 4 years ago, we started noticing some declines. Well, with a bird that nests on the ground, 1 year of decline or two, you don't get too concerned about, because it's tough raising, hatching eggs laying on the ground and raising a brood that runs around the ground that aren't trees. So a couple of years isn't a big concern, but about 3 years ago, we started really getting concerned. That trend continued, and it was happening rapidly. So at that time, we brought to you a couple of years ago a resolution to make some changes. And that's all we could do without a change in 800. We took hens out of the bag in fall, and no county could have more than one. So that action a couple of years ago was in effect this year. At the same time, we went through a rule change proposal to make most of the turkey hunting season regulations as are presented in the Hunt Fish brochure. So we did that at that time, and we watched populations continue to decline. At first, it was mostly a western thing, and then we started seeing them declining in both central and northeastern Oklahoma, especially the northern part of those regions. Central northeast, we were looking at recently 20-25% declines, maybe a little higher. In the northwest, about 50% declines. And in the southwest, there's some areas that are down 70 to 80% from three to 4 years ago. So it's pretty significant. So we had to do something. And it became apparent that we needed more drastic measures than the ones we'd already taken. A lot of factors affect turkey populations: weather, habitat change, predation, some disease, etc. But as an agency, we can't control any of those things. All we can do is control, on a big scale, statewide scale, all we can do is control hunting regulations. So we went to the science to see what it is that you can change in hunting regulations that might make a difference. We found two areas. One is tom populations. Number of toms in the population have to be high enough for good breeding success, etc. And then what could we do to improve nesting through regulations? And we find that moving the opening day back does have an effect. That early part of April is real critical to breeding and nest laying and the initiation of incubation, and it is best if you're not hunting birds during that time. So the resolutions that are out there that before you are basically designed to reduce harvest of toms, especially early in the breeding season, and then moving the season back. The rifle one, that's in there for a variety of reasons. One is it's harder to identify a jake in the fall unless you're really close between a jake and a hen. They're not mature enough to be easily distinguishable. So rifle season, where they're taking them at distance, may shoot hens. For me, it's also a safety issue. If you're camouflaged and maybe have a decoy and hunting turkeys, and somebody is shooting at turkeys from 100 yards away. It's also a safety issue. Once we developed the resolutions, or the proposed resolutions, then Betsy did a human dimension survey, an online thing to gauge people's opinions of these resolutions. I think there were about 5,215 responses, which was huge. And there were 5 places to comment on that survey. So between Eric and I, we had 5,215 times 5 comments to review. And we got a really good idea of what people's opinion were. Universally, people said they're down, something has to be done. They were very much in support of the not having rifles in the fall, very much in support of the 2-bird bag limit that we initially proposed. About a third of them, almost a third of them, on their own, not prompted, said, hey, we need to go to 1. 2's not enough, we need to go to 1. They were in support of the youth season as well, and in support of delaying it. Some of them wanted it shorter. They said, hey, delay it, make it shorter. And some said, I'll support it because you aren't cutting dates. Excuse me. So, from that survey, we were very confident that there's a huge amount of support for these. And also, as Bill, I think, will mention, we're looking at the 1 bird for spring too, because of the number of people that asked for it, and it's probably warranted. We have a real problem. So I'll turn it over to Bill.
Before Bill jumps, I want to ask you, Rod, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, and despite the third or more that wrote in comments that it needs to go to 1 time, we had a lot of internal debate about that as well. I mean, there are plenty of biologists and game wardens and other folks out there in the field that thought we should have led with a 1 tom statewide limit to begin with when we put 2 out, just because we're always trying to balance the needs of the population with the opportunity to hunt, giving people maximum opportunity. So.
Right.
But one thing that I've heard some commissioners comment before about and ask about is this just happening in Oklahoma? It seems like it's happening in other states. I know there's a lot of research going on in Missouri. You've sensed some of that that you've seen. Kansas, I know, is experiencing issues. And so people don't get the idea that this is just an Oklahoma thing and that we're addressing this issue on an island all by ourselves. You might talk quickly just about your role on the NWTF technical committee, both you and Eric, Easterns, Rios, and how you all kind of coordinate when it comes to these declines and the research needs at a national level.
Right. Yep. We are both on a national committee, technical committee, and then we're both on a regional. I serve on the Western group, and Eric serves on the Southeast. Southeastern group has been addressing declines for a number of years. Turkeys are declining all across the southeast part of the U.S. Partly, long-term habitat changes is a big reason. There are 3 primary Rio Grande states in the country. There are more states that have Rio Grandes, but the 3 primary ones are Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. That's right in the native range of Rios. Most of the western states that have them, we have relocated turkeys to those. West Kansas, or a lot of Kansas, and Oklahoma and West Texas are seeing the identical declines that we are in Oklahoma. That typically says it's not really a disease problem because they tend to be localized. That type of thing is often a general weather pattern when it's at wide scale. So. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, JD. We're not working alone. We're working with lots of good scientists around the country on these type issues. And talking to, Kansas has already made regulation changes. Texas is considering them, at least for West Texas. And so,
what did Kansas do?
Did?
Yeah, what did they do?
They blocked off parts of the state and said that in these blocks, kind of like our southeast zone, no more than one bird can be taken from those areas. And the states around us, I know Kansas, Arkansas, and some other states around us have already moved their seasons back. And our later date will coincide pretty close to theirs. One of our problems opening early was we got all these non-residents coming in because they couldn't hunt their estates yet. So we were getting more harvest, although we like non-resident hunters, we were getting more harvest especially on our public lands, because we opened before a lot of the other states.
Yes, Commissioner.
Rod, is there any place that ground nesting birds are doing well? Looking at states and
In other states?
that ground nest, yes, in Oklahoma and Kansas,
yeah,
Nebraska.
Interestingly enough, the states that have Merriam's birds are doing well. And you know, we have some Merriam's-like birds in the Western Panhandle, and they seem to be doing well. So whatever's going on is not great for Rios, but it's not hurting Merriam's. We're finding all the people that really work with turkeys closely find that they're way more complex than we ever knew. And so a lot of questions we can't answer. Best turkey experts in the world say there's a lot of questions they can't answer. So anyway, but if you go west, you know, some of the western states are still having problems with nuisance turkeys. You know, they have problems with too many turkeys.
Yep.
So like we were in the early 2000s. So anyway, that's, yeah.
Well, while you were talking, I was sitting here thinking about quail and other ground nesting birds that, I know in my area, predation is certainly part of it.
Right.
You got hogs that didn't used to be there 20 years ago, and nobody traps coons anymore, and you just think about the amount of predation. If you don't have recruitment of young turkeys.
Yeah. And if you think about,
you lose your population.
if you think about turkeys, it's like a 2.5 months process. You know, from the time they start breeding, start building a nest, take 2 weeks or longer to lay eggs, about a month to incubate. The poults can't fly into trees for another like 4 weeks. So they're sitting ducks for a whole lot of things for quite a while. I'm amazed that they do as well as they do in good times.
The other part, I for one would certainly be for going to a one turkey limit. I think a lot of people currently, if they call in a jake, they'll shoot it and then try to kill a bigger bird, that's a later bird.
Right.
We don't allow shooting jakes except for kids or a beginning hunter, the only option. But I appreciate what you guys have done on this, and I think we got to address it very seriously and aggressively.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Rod? Yeah. It is. It's a pretty tight window. You know, that's based mostly on daylight, and there's not much difference in sunrise, sunset across the state.
Questions out there with the aflatoxins?
Well, I have a lot of concern about the effect of people putting bait out there, that whether it attracts turkeys so that they're easier to be predated. If you've ever watched turkeys around a corn feeder, when it goes off and the birds come running, I'm sure predators learn that too. And then the aflatoxins that issues. Usually those don't directly kill turkeys, but they make them sick, which means more difficult to reproduce.
We did.
And it can kill turkeys.
I might mention we did make turkey research a priority for the wildlife research program this year too. So I know Dwayne and others will probably be engaged in some of that, helping us answer some of these questions and really get a finer point on what the low-hanging fruit is, what makes the most sense for us to address to have a really good impact.
Thank you.
Okay, so to circle back to the resolution, I mean, Rod covered everything I was gonna say. We appreciate Corey and Betsy for doing the public comment survey for us. That was really helpful to understand, you know, what our hunters thought. Several of us, Eric, Rod, and I attended the National Wild Turkey Federation board meeting and got some input from that staff. Appreciate that. But, you know, when we circle back to the resolution, there's 4 main parts to it. The fall gun season going to shotgun only for those counties that are open to fall gun hunting doesn't impact archery. Archery's still open. I've had that question. So archery doesn't change. The couple of big ones is the 1 tom statewide bag limit. The next one was shifting the season back to open on April 16th and running through May 16th statewide. So that actually helps our southeast situation where they had their own or a different season going on in the southeast. Now it'll be statewide opener, which is good, and had a lot of good comments about that from the hunters. Appreciate that. And then the spring season will be the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, the weekend before, kind of like it is now. So, as we heard, the original resolution had a 2 tom statewide limit, but after lots of comments on the survey, lots of input from staff, Turkey Federation board, I think going to 1 tom statewide is the right move. So that's my recommendation.
Bill, are we still hunting hens in the fall?
Nope. That went away a couple years ago, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I just read it in the.
Yep. It was a resolution we did a year ago.
Right.
Either sex.
Apparently it's in our regulation book still, maybe?
Yeah, archery's still
Right.
section.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman, as Rod stated, these are pretty drastic changes to the turkey season. I'd like to see some harvest numbers. I'd like to see the comments. I'd like to study this a little bit more. I suggest we pass this till the next meeting. That's my motion, to pass it to the next meeting.
Okay.
If we need a motion to do that, I'm not sure we do.
We will miss getting it in the regulation book, won't we? If we
Yes.
table it.
Well, we might
Why
have to
can't-
push back our publication. This information just, really, I'm kind of put out over it. I mean, pretty short notice to make a big decision like this, and the commission's not been very well informed, to be candid with you. And so if we have to put back our publication date, we can put it back. If not, we can put something in the publication that says go online and look at the regulation.
Do we have a motion? Yes.
Would you be for the proposal that we just not have a hunting season for turkey next year?
In the southwest corner, yes, sir.
Okay.
And 2 counties, Harlan and Sherrill County is devastating.
I don't think there's any question something has to be done, but is this enough? I think the commission just wants to take a little bit more time and look at it and make sure we can make an informed decision. So that's why I say we table it till next month and make a decision. Sir, we're not saying we're not gonna do anything. We want further study, and we're gonna I'd like to see it postponed to the next meeting and make a decision. But I'd like more data, and I'd like to review all our options, including taking hens off the table in the fall season. I mean, how many are we killing? I don't know. I haven't seen any numbers.
Yeah, to do anything with the archery season would take a rule change proposal, and we are going to do that. By,
Do emergency rules next time. Just like we're doing right now.
well,
Like I said, I want to, we
have
should,
a ti-
we
we have
should
a time-
consider all the options
we
here.
have a time problem. What we have built in is we're taking these significant steps. We could have a good year of reproduction this year, and a year from now, we can feel like we're not in the emergency that we are and can be satisfied. But we also have room for even another step, and that would take a rule change proposal. But that would be to eliminate fall season, gun and/or archery, eliminate falls and, hens in the fall for archery. And that's number small. That's why the fall season isn't as critical as spring, because the harvest numbers are pretty small. Very few people hunt turkeys during the gun season. I think that the turkeys taken with archery season are just incidental. They're deer hunters. Well, they have a chance maybe to take a turkey, but those numbers are small, probably not big enough to really affect populations. So I would be disappointed if we waited past today because of the timeline for producing our hunting and fishing regulations. We pushed it about as far back as we could in order to get the public comment period in. We might have done this a month ago, but we wanted public input. And we got public input, and the public really appreciates what we're bringing to you today. And I think to go further, we need to wait on this year's reproduction, see what's going on. There's some early indications that it's better than it's been. It's too early to say for sure, but early indications say we're probably better than the last 2-3 years. So I would recommend we don't look at anything more than what we presented today, and that we go with those and then evaluate it for next year. That would be my thoughts.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we should be hamstrung by a publication date for the regs. I'm sorry that we might not get it in there, but there's a disclaimer already that says that you need to look at the laws. So I think we can react to that. But I suggest we take a further look at this. Make
Bring
sure.
it back to the next meeting,
Yes.
that'd be a recommendation.
Yes.
Could I just ask Nels real quick, just for another data point, what the contract is with the vendor that produces the hunting regulations?
Hasn't there been some?
Since the contract expires at the end of the month.
Probably looking at
It's quick to get them distributed before September 1 opener for.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
maybe as a compromise, we can set this for a special meeting we get a little bit more information before we make a decision. If that would be something, I think you can call, of course, and coordinate. I think there's more information that's needed. And would that satisfy your concerns?
Yeah, I just like to look at more information.
Me too, absolutely.
Well, I don't know if we need a motion to pass it.
Commissioner Barwick, just so I know, and Zelps, what additional information would you need? What would we need?
I like to see the comments. Harvest.
Harvest information, I'd like to read the comments
See how many
too.
non-residents are hunting in here.
Do we want to limit to only Oklahoma residents? Do we only want to pass this to wildlife management areas? I don't know any of those things. Haven't considered it. I mean, it just came up today.
Well, and I'd hoped that you guys would trust me and Eric to do what we think is best for turkeys. And these are our recommendations for this point. And I would request that anything above what we bring to you now be considered for future regulation changes. Anyway, that would be my request of you. Yes?
Rod, the mention of WMAs there, what percentage of our turkeys are killed on WMAs? It's a high percentage on private.
You know, Eric is our number guy, and I don't know if you can tell that
Yeah.
offhand, Eric,
Doesn't
but
have the
The
information.
guesstimate.
what percent?
Of course.
I'll take a wild guess. 15%, Eric, would you say that may be a ballpark? 15% of turkeys are taken on WMAs? Yeah.
Rod, you need to trust us to do the right thing too. And we just want more information.
I do.
And to take a good look at this situation.
and
So
I-
as you said, it's
I
drastic changes, right? That's what you said.
I feel like going from a 3-bird bag statewide to a 1-bird bag statewide is a drastic change. It's a big change. And I think moving the season back is a big change.
And we're not saying that those might not be implemented, but we just want to take another look at it, rather than make a 15-minute decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, on the same time, guys, this is the guy that saw turkeys become a huntable population in the state. The one that marshaled it through all the times when there were very few turkeys, but a few scattered around to the point that we had probably one of the best turkey populations in the nation on an acreage
If that's
kind of
true,
basis.
why did you need public comment? Because you already knew what you wanted to do.
We didn't have
I don't
to
mean that,
do
I'm-
public comments for this because it's not a
That's
rulemaking
right.
proposal, but
That's
we,
right, but they waited for the public comments. We didn't hear this last meeting because they're waiting for the public comments.
correct.
So they were considering the public comments. And I'm saying, I haven't seen any of them.
It wasn't required.
I know
but
it's
we
not required.
But we chose to.
Okay, but it delayed everything, right? Isn't that why you didn't bring it up last meeting? Because you're under a time crunch. You're putting us under a time crunch now. And it's driven by the publication.
Which we did confirm, the contract ends June 30th. We have to have everything in to be printed by that date. I just got a text, but.
Yep. And if you wonder why the timing came about, one is we do winter surveys, flock surveys, that go through March. And so we wanted our data to look at from the winter flock surveys. Also, we had to wait for the rule change proposal, or the rule change to become effective. So those were two things that caused us not to come to you sooner.
Earlier, yeah.
So the timeline is not ideal, but it is the one we had to work with. And I do trust you, Commissioner Barwick, and I ask you to trust me as well. That's all that discussion was.
Rod?
Yep.
100% of the turkey hunters I knew this past year either took none or one of private hunters.
Right.
And I think the debate that we're wanting to talk about a little bit is the problem more on the WMAs, where you've got out-of-state people coming in that may take whatever you're going to allow them to take. But I think, wouldn't you agree that a majority of the private landowners saw the problem 2 years ago and have self-regulated themselves?
Yes. A number of people in the survey said, yeah, do something. I didn't even hunt this year.
Right.
There weren't enough birds.
Yeah.
So The public recognizes it. Some of the guides that typically guide hunters did not book any hunts for 2 years, some of them.
Well, Jerry Shaw just confirmed that it's roughly 10% of the turkeys harvested are harvested on public land. Okay.
Wow, thank you, Jerry.
10% are harvested on public land.
Yep.
So,
So 90% on private land?
yes.
Yeah, the public land harvest is, on a statewide basis, is not an issue. I think we have some WMAs that really get hit hard, but we're looking at statewide regulations. We're not looking at WMA specific things, so this is what we recommend.
And if it's like deer hunting, about a similar percentage of those are being harvested by non-residents. Pretty low, 10%-ish. I don't know if that's exactly true for turkeys, but that's what we see in deer.
Commissioner Barwick, Commissioner Zells, are you saying that you would like to put this off for maybe a couple of weeks, have a meeting in between time?
At least 2 weeks, yes.
2 weeks?
Just table it for now, basically, and we figure out what we do from there.
Okay. Motion is to table it for the time being.
I'll second that.
Second. Discussion in that regard? There being none?
Commissioner Brewster?
Yes, as long as it's after the 22nd of June. I'm gonna be gone till then.
Commissioner Barwick?
Aye.
Mr. Hughes?
Aye.
Mr. Gaddis? Aye. Mr. Zelps?
Aye.
Mr. Dillingham?
Aye.
Mr. Holder? Mr.
Aye.
Chairman,
Yes.
to accommodate, has to be after the 22nd.
Yep.
I'm gonna be gone. Yeah. Look at the calendar today and see what you might want.
I return on the 21st, 22nd would actually be a workable day. 13th.
Travel can get delayed.
If we could do it later this week, that'd work for me. Sure.
Yeah, that may be challenging, and I'm in South Dakota Wednesday, but. Well, we need to know what all you're looking for. The raw comments are there. Right.
Are we looking at a date or not? Is that?
I mean, do you want me to, let me get with staff and figure out what we can do in what amount of time. Let me figure out what the publication tight timeline is and what the alternatives are to addressing this issue, to give ourselves maximum time possible, if you don't mind, and then we can.
I think that's good.
Oh, yeah, because we couldn't do open meeting act notice by Wednesday. Yeah, can't do
And
that.
JD, what do you have on the July agenda? Maybe we just push that onto this one.
Yeah, we haven't even collected agenda items at this point.
But you could, but if it was on the 23rd, or even on the 30th.
Or you, so,
That's this Friday.
what are you saying about you mean just at the July 5th meeting?
No, I'm saying we don't have a July 5th meeting. We put that into the special meeting agenda.
Okay.
So you don't have to have
Yeah.
2 meetings back to back.
If we have anything, it's not gonna be that much,
That's
so
what I
that's a
mean.
potential way to do it. But, again, I might just suggest we figure out what options we have on the publication deadlines to give us the maximum amount of time possible, and it may end up being we have to go to an online publication just to be able to accommodate everything on the fly. But how much time is it gonna take us to get the data compiled from staff based on the questions you have? And then we could get back poll dates with everybody and
Yeah, you get back with us, let us know.
try to nail it down from there. That work?
But I would suggest combining, if we have a special meeting, combining that with the
Okay,
July
and then
agenda.
skip the regular July meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good on that at this point?
I think that all makes sense, Director. I would suggest possibly that by this Wednesday, that the commission submit questions and data they'd like to see. Possibly by close of business Wednesday, Rhonda can send out a full notice for dates and maybe give us 3 or 4 dates.
Yep.
That will work, and then,
Yes, we can do that.
I think also what would be good is to go back and restate exactly what you're recommending to us. I think this is a little bit vague. So give me, you
Well, and I
know.
think the resolution is in your packet, right?
Yeah, but it has a colon and then there's nothing after mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the exact proposal.
We good with that? I think?
Not to get off track, but I thought we were gonna go do away with our manual and kinda go online with everything.
There'd be several that would love to do that, and we've been kind of phasing it out slowly anyway, just to kind of get used to people. We still have a lot of people, though, that ask for the hard copy version, but this may be the time for us to just kick the can and be done and do it all online so we can, have more time. Yes.
Last minute, they added another county to this that's not in their packet.
Yeah, well, that's gonna be tabled anyway, so.
Yeah, but they're gonna use this to review.
Bryan County was missing from that list,
Brian.
right? Yeah.
Okay, moving along here to item number 19, discussion and action if necessary concerning the Oklahoma Wildlife Conservation Foundation, including the status update, approval of appointments, reappointment of members for the foundation board of directors, board committees, fundraising, and other related matters involving the foundation. Commissioner Barwick.
Yes, let me find my notes here. Foundation met on May 3rd, and one of the items that was approved were reappointments of Richard Hatcher, Gene Cates, Reagan Siegfried as directors, and newly appointed Lee Gaddis as an additional director on the foundation. I think you're all familiar with those candidates. And most of them have been serving for the last 3 years, and we welcome Lee on the board. The bylaws require the commission to approve the new directors, so I would make a motion to approve those 4 candidates to serve as directors on the foundation.
second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Roll call.
Commissioner Brewster.
Aye.
Commissioner Barwick.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Gaddis. Aye. Commissioner Zelps. Aye. Commissioner Dillingham. Aye. Commissioner Holder. Aye. Commissioner Mabry.
Aye.
Now, as far as other foundation news, I think Rick covered it pretty good last meeting, unless, Rick, you have any updates you want to give? Okay. Our next meeting is July 12th at 2 o'clock at the headquarters, so that's the next foundation event, so to speak. Anybody have any questions? I would point out that our fiscal year starts the same time as the departments, so July 1st is our fiscal year, and I would hope and expect everyone to make contributions to the foundation for the ensuing fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Agenda item number 20, consideration and vote to approve, amend, reject, or take other action on the nominations of the 2022 commissioner officers. Commissioner Zells.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee met, and it's our recommendation that Lee Gaddis serve as our next chairman, Jim Barwick as our vice chairman, and Rick Holder serves as our secretary treasurer. And that was a recommendation of our committee.
We have a recommendation by Commissioner Zelps.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? There being none, roll call.
Commissioner Brewster. Commissioner Barwick. Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Gaddis. Commissioner Zelps.
Aye.
Commissioner Dillingham.
Aye.
Commissioner Holder. Commissioner Mabry.
Aye.
I'd like the record reflect this is a historic moment. This is our first lady chairman who's going to ever serve in this position, so.
Very good. Commissioner Gaddis will do an excellent job, I'm sure, and congratulations on the chairman next year. In item 21, the new business discussion of any matter not known about or which could not have been reasonably foreseen 24 hours prior to the scheduled meeting. There being none, the next commission meeting is be on Tuesday, July 6th, 2021, 9 a.m. at headquarters here in Oklahoma City.
Unless we have a special.
Yeah, unless we reschedule.
Unless we have a special meeting. At that, I'll call the meeting adjourned.
Hey, all you outdoor Oklahoma lovers. I'm J.D. Strong, Director of Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. And on behalf of our 350 employees, we want to say thank you. In this unprecedented time, there's no question that there's been a lot that has confronted us as a society and as Oklahomans. But in the midst of those dark clouds, there's been a silver lining. People have been getting outdoors in droves. And because of that, we are able to see increased license sales, increased support for all things wildlife and fisheries conservation, and we're able to continue to host events like this state FFA shooting competition that we have going on behind us today. So without that support, without those license sales, we would not be able to put on stuff like this. If you didn't know it, we're a non-appropriated agency, so we get no help from the state legislature or taxpayers. So we depend heavily on those license sales as well as the sale of sporting equipment, guns, ammunition, fishing poles, bows and arrows, you name it. All of those purchases go towards us being able to get the next generation engaged in hunting and shooting sports, as well as other outdoor adventures, fishing, that sort of thing. So on behalf of the Department of Wildlife, we just want to say thank you. Thank you for bringing us this silver lining in the midst of all these dark clouds that we faced as a result of COVID. Get out there and continue to support wildlife conservation through the purchase of your hunting and fishing license. And don't forget, our outdoors are always open.